I do not support corruption. All I can say, if I were in your position, I would take with myself and hand over to someone else who is not compromised.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. My friendship with, and Mr. Speaker, may I ask for the privilege of addressing the member by name?
You do have the privilege, member.
With the concurrence of the members. My friendship with Nigel is over 20 years old. And the friendship is based on clearly mutual respect, mutual interest, but also a similar outlook and a shared philosophy. We have a mind share on many issues. In fact, as younger men looking on at the challenges of the country at the time, we developed, Mr. Speaker, a kind of roadmap of solutions to the country's problems. The question was, how do we get these set of policies implemented? Mr. Speaker, the opportunities came when I became Prime Minister the first time around. It was too short-lived then to have put any of those plans into action. Nevertheless, I had the opportunity, having taken on the position of Prime Minister, to visit the IMF. And I took along with me as my special advisor at the time, Nigel Clark. It was a profound meeting. It was about to assume the role of Prime Minister. And I went with former Prime Minister Bruce Golding as well. And I'll never forget, in that meeting with the IMF, something that was said, and I won't repeat it here, but the impact of what was said made me realize the depths of the problems that Jamaica was in. And I came back from those meetings with a very sober outlook on Jamaica's prospects. In 2013, the new Minister of Finance also went to the IMF, Dr. Peter Phillips, and he came back and made a similar statement, which was to the effect that the meeting with the IMF was very sobering. Well, though he didn't, he implemented it. The reason why I start my tribute to Nigel at this point, it's because up until then, Jamaica had a need-hate relationship with the IMF. Not a love-hate, a need-hate. We needed the IMF, but we hated the IMF. Some of you would remember a former Minister of Finance standing up in this room and saying, "Bye-bye, IMF." Tata, go, thank you for reminding me. Tata, IMF. And for many decades before, Jamaica's problems were sometimes blamed on the IMF. We took a different perspective, Nigel and myself. We started from the point of view that our problems are our responsibility. We have agency, and we must do what is necessary to put our country on the right track. In 2009, 2010, former Prime Minister Golding also took that view and started the first debt exchange, the first real attempt by Jamaica to address our debt crisis. By 2013, the then Finance Minister, Dr. Peter Phillips, came to that understanding as well, that we need to embrace the challenges that we have. We need to put in place the programs, but more than that, we need to own the IMF program. And so what happened in Jamaica was a shift from saying an IMF program is imposed on us to us embracing an IMF program, to the point of establishing the EPOC, the Economic Program Oversight Committee. And I want to give a very fair view of how we have reached where we are, because it is no single administration that has done it. Started under the Bruce Golding administration of 2007 to 2011, continued under the Portia Simpson Miller administration from 2011 to 2015. And it has continued through my administration. We inherited an IMF program, the Extended Fund Facility, which started in 2013. And I appointed Minister Clark, some of you will remember, as Ambassador Plenipotentiary for Economic Affairs. It was a specific appointment to enable him to deal with our international partners, particularly the international funding agencies. And Minister Clark worked with them directly to ensure that there was, first of all, an understanding between the government and the IMF, that trust was built, and that there was the assurance of the commitment of the government to carry through the reforms. But it was also important that he was a very good interlocutor in ensuring that the programs were also developed with Jamaica's interest at the forefront. And so we were able to end the EFF with several reviews to go, because we had excelled on those programs, on the EFF, to the point where we could graduate early. Some of you may not recall that we ended the EFF early, and in October 2016, we entered the precautionary standby agreement. That was because of the phenomenal performance of the government in meeting the various benchmarks. So when the opportunity came for Nigel to be appointed the Minister of Finance, that was embraced. And Nigel became the Minister of Finance with the mandate to accelerate the implementation of not just the IMF program, but Jamaica's program of economic reform. The things that we had discussed almost a decade before, we now had the opportunity to have those things fully executed. When we discussed these things 10 years before, the issue was always, we know what to do from a policy perspective, but will we have the political space to do it? That was always the challenge. Will we have the political space? And the political space is not only determined by the arguments in the cabinet. The political space is also determined by the people. What will the people agree to? Will they want to hear about high reserves and reduction in debt? Or do they want to hear about an increase in path or fixing roads or more water? These are the trade-offs that governments face in creating the space, the political space. So you will hear the Minister of Finance speak about the fiscal space, the revenue room to deliver. But there's also another space, the political space to implement policy and keep on track with policy. And so my commitment when I appointed Minister Clarke as a minister was that we would have the political space. My job is to make sure that the political space is there for the policies to stay on track. And what you're seeing happening now in the transformation of the Jamaican economy is the political space giving the wherewithal for policy to be implemented. And now we are seeing the dividends. Now, to implement these policies and to secure the political space, it's not an easy task, because as some persons will recall, that when governments are faced with a narrowing political space, the response is to say, run with it. It's better to be here figuring out how to solve the problem we create than to be on the outside. So run with it. That is a challenge of a tightening political space. This administration has sacrificed great political capital to ensure that the policies that will yield the long-term and medium-term benefits are implemented. So let's look at some of the things that have changed. The practical things, you know, since you have mentioned it, remember, we have gone through 9 budgets and we have not increased taxes. Our reserves are at the highest levels they have been in decades. We have halved the national debt from 144% of GDP to now what, 74% of GDP. These are real things that have happened to transform our economy under the direction of Minister Clarke as the Minister of Finance. Minister Clarke presided over legislation to create an independent central bank. It is that independence of the central bank that has made Jamaica probably the only country in the region with a free floating exchange rate. Yes. Dr. Clarke spent quite a bit of his own time directly in the formulation of the Fiscal Commission. I think that you would call that one his baby. And the Fiscal Commission is an important institutional legacy that Dr. Clarke will leave behind, because it is the Fiscal Commission that will ensure that even if the political space has narrowed, that the policies to ensure the fiscal sustainability of Jamaica will remain. It is that institution that will take our fiscal affairs substantially out of the political domain. You know, Dr. Clark, Nigel will be credited for, this is something that we should have been doing a long time ago, Nigel, but you did it. You issued the first international financial instrument denominated in Jamaican dollars. This man put Jamaican dollar that we all, some of us, disparage. He put the Jamaican dollar instrument on the international market for people to buy that instrument in Jamaican dollar. Yes, that's a legacy, historic. Yes, historic. One of the challenges, Mr. Speaker, and I'm wrapping up shortly, but this is something that I would want every Jamaican to appreciate. Whilst the narrowing political space has led to many policy missteps and bad policies implemented, and you can go through them from FinSAC to allowing government entities to run up debt, to all kinds of bad policies. What we cannot deny as well, that has contributed to the stagnation of the Jamaican economy over the last 50 years, is that we have been hit by natural disasters. Jamaica is vulnerable to natural disasters. And in fact, a part of the accumulation of debt is as a result of government borrowing to recover from disasters. I speak about this all the time, but I'm not certain it has filtered into the consciousness of the population. But what this administration has done is to create a new way of managing shocks, whether it is a natural disaster shock, a health shock, or any other economic shock. And that is the creation of fiscal buffers. For the first time, Jamaica is able to put aside resources. But we have also created what is commonly termed as a multi-layered risk mitigation, risk financing system, where you would have seen it in operation. Jamaica hit by a barrel, and we didn't have to turn to the international community for borrowing or request for extensive aid. The key element of that would be the issuance of the catastrophe bond. Jamaica being the first small country to successfully issue a catastrophe bond. That is the achievement of my friend Nigel. In addition to that, coming out of the IMF agreement and reflecting on the period 2011 to 2015, where not only was the private sector called upon to take haircuts and to restructure, the workers of the country were called upon to absorb wage freezes in order to prevent the country from going under. The workers of the country did that. And we both, in our conversations, have always recognized that the sacrifice of the workers must be acknowledged and rewarded. And therefore, when we came to look at how we're going to treat with the compensation of the workers, we were very favorable towards what has been asked for many administrations before but never done, a compensation review. Now, I must tell you that Dr. Clark took that one on fully and personally. Was right there with the unions, right there with the meetings. And, $200 billion later. And I want to repeat that point, that the wage bill has increased by that amount of money. Significant. I remember the minister, in one of his unique presentation styles, came here to try to show how the proportion of the wage bill has increased. I believe you came with an abacus, right? Trying to show the proportion of the wage bill. That will be an enduring legacy as well. I am not saying that it is yet perfect. There are still unfinished ends in that endeavor, which the next minister will be tasked to address. However, Mr. Speaker, Nigel also did some very practical things. Minister Vaz has asked me to convey to you, Nigel, his eternal gratitude for the support you gave in us acquiring, in short order, 275 new buses, which we will get. We have already gotten 100. Well, we have got 175, and the rest is going through the system. So, Minister Mackenzie already thanked you for the garbage trucks. But there are some other important legacies as well, which we must acknowledge. You know, the National Stadium. Built over, 50 years ago. It's the office needs some repair. And within that budget space, Minister Clark has managed to find a solution to both the financing and the actual improvement and repair work. You will hear more about that. Minister Grange, I'm sure, will tell you more about that. But the development of the Kingston waterfront, the linear park, that will be done. Minister Clark, working with the World Bank, we have managed to, I believe you signed the loan agreement for that. And there are many other areas, including the development of, I don't like to use the word pipeline, because things don't generally come out of the pipeline. That's what here. But we have developed a train line of public-private partnership projects. Over $2 billion of public-private partnership projects to come, including the expansion of the North-South Highway, the North Coast Highway, and some other major infrastructure projects. You know, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that Nigel is a special resource for Jamaica. That he has served with great dignity, poise, and confidence. He was described, the description was meant to be derogatory, but one member called him black royalty. Meant to be, derogatory. But I believe he captured the essence of the man.
Yes, black royalty.
And I'm very pleased to have been associated with you, Nigel. I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to work with you to get all of what we have accomplished done. I don't believe 90% of the people understand what we have done. It is going to take decades to truly understand it. There are many books that we have to write to explain how we sat and talked about what we need to change in Jamaica, what we need to do, and to plan it so that it has happened seamlessly, without disruption. Ministers of Finance and Prime Ministers have to work very closely together, because there will always be opportunity for people to take the action of the Minister of Finance and try to turn it into a problem for the Prime Minister. But that could never happen between us, because we have a very close friendship, but more importantly, a passion for the vision of improving Jamaica. But I've always known that Nigel's skills and his service is not always going to be local in focus. There are other countries that need to benefit from the experience of Jamaica. And it is indeed a distinct honor that that skill resided with us, and we now give that skill to the world. So, Mr. Speaker, we now embark on a new phase. What Minister Clark and I had defined to do, I believe we have largely accomplished it. Now, we have discussed this other phase as well, and we have a plan, and you will see that plan being rolled out in the next term. Now and next term. In the same way, we have transformed the fiscal arrangements. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are going to take the dividends and benefits of that and transform the human resources, the productivity, and the peace and security of the country to finally complete the mission of prosperity for the Jamaican people. I wish my friend Nigel all the best in his endeavors, and I'm certain that his particular skill sets will always be available to the people of Jamaica. God bless you, and good speed on your journey.
Loyal viewers and subscribers, honorable people, give thanks for your support to the AVI-NUE. Know that I appreciate you sincerely. New viewers, welcome on board. Know that your presence is appreciated. Please subscribe to the channel and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. United we win.